Hello, and welcome. Today, we will be talking about Amanda Brown's Legally Blonde, released in 2001. Under the scope of Sonja Foss's feminist criticism. Without further ado, let's get started. To start, Legally Blonde is an American comedy romance film based on Amanda Brown's novel of the same name. It was scripted by Karen McCullough Lutz and Kirsten Smith and directed by Robert Luketic. In the film, Reese Witherspoon stars as Elle Woods, a sorority girl who is attempting to win back her ex-boyfriend, played by Matthew Davis, by getting a Juris Doctor degree at Harvard Law School, and in the process overcomes prejudice against blondes and triumphs as a successful lawyer through her self-confidence and fashion beauty know-how. To showcase the film's popularity from when it began in the making as a novel and its unerring cult classic popularity today, the film was released only a month and a half after the novel was published by Amanda Brown. The novel is actually based on Amanda Brown's own experiences as a blonde going to Stanford Law School. She, much like Elle Woods, was obsessed with fashion and beauty. Brown read Elle magazine, which is where Elle Wood gets her namesake from, and she quote-unquote frequently clashed with the personalities of her fellow peers. Legally Blonde's Kairos, its context, it was a very timely movie. Its roots were in dismantling the rejection of traditional femininity and hyper-femininity within the feminist movement by second-wave feminists onto third-wave feminists. So to explain this a little bit more, second-wave feminists were essentially trying to uphold first-wave feminists. First-wave feminists were the ones who were voting for their rights or trying to get their rights to vote. They did all the base work for us and created the basis of feminism. Second-wave feminism or feminists were the women of the 70s and 80s who were rejecting traditional femininity because they felt like it hurt the feminist movement. Third-wave feminism, which we see Elle Woods is in. She's a third-wave feminist. Third-wave feminists were making themselves into sexual creatures that were avidly obsessed with hyperfemininity in order to make themselves into sex symbols of their own will, as opposed to being made into sex objects by men and the male gaze. So this had its roots in dismantling the rejection that those second-wave feminists had. This movie showed that a hyper-feminine woman, such as Elle Woods, was capable of being beautiful as well as an intelligent, independent woman. The artifact also is capable of carrying feminist ideals onto non-feminist groups through an easily digestible comedy romance setting, like we mentioned before. It's easy for all audiences to watch. To critique this piece, I used feminist criticism method. My reasoning behind using this method was to discover if this piece was truly feminist in suggesting we accept traditional femininity into feminism, or if it was rather a defense from non-feminist women on their traditional femininity. We begin the analysis by checking our boxes of strategies used to disrupt the hegemony that we see within Sonja Foss's summary of feminist criticism. Those are generating multiple perspectives, cultivating ambiguity, reframing, enacting, and juxtaposing incongruities. Straight off the bat, we see that Legally Blonde does generate multiple perspectives. We get a lot of this versus that within the film. Men versus women, rich versus poor, Ivy League versus non-Ivy League, blondes versus brunettes, straight versus gay, and teachers versus students. Pretty much the only verses we don't explicitly see here is the, black versus white, or minority versus majority when it comes to race. Obviously, some of these hold a little bit more weight in the movie than others, with our main focus being men versus women and blonde versus brunettes. We can also move into more complex categories like hyper-femininity of third-wave feminists, which are pink and girly, that sort of thing, versus second-wave feminism's rejection of femininity. We can also look at first-wave feminist gender roles, which is women still being the homemakers and staying and working inside the home, versus third-wave gender roles, which are women are capable of working outside the home. They should be allowed to work outside the home and earn as much money as they like. Ultimately, we find that our artifact is generating plenty of perspectives through our multiple characters. Next, Legally Blonde reframes traditional romance stories in a few ways. First, our protagonist is a woman. Although the specific female-to-male ratio for 90s movies isn't really available, looking at the first 20 films on Shortlist's 45 best 90s films, we find that 19 were male leads, with only one being a combo male and female lead, and that was the movie Leon. Our protagonist is also a blonde and has what others would consider to be traditional beauty. Again, we can't necessarily measure the character's ideas of traditional beauty, especially in our popular romance films of the 90s, but we can look at filmmakers' tendencies towards brunettes. If we look at IMDb's top 15 movies of the 90s, we find that a majority of our female leads are brunettes. We also find that Elle Woods matches the exact stereotypes for the villains we find in romance movies. Rich, blonde, and traditionally beautiful. We see the stereotype in many films, such as Regina George from Mean Girls, Miranda Priestly from Devil Wears Prada, although, is she really a villain? Yes, but no. And Heather Chandler from The Heathers. Furthermore, rarely are our 90s romance female leads Ivy League level college students, or even college students at all, with most of these romance movies taking place in mid to late high school or late 20s, early 30s age in an office or working sort of setting. Third, our artifact enacts possible futures if we disregard hegemonic ideas. In our movie, the hegemonic idea is that blondes, or rather those with traditional beauty, are not smart enough to get into Ivy League level schools and become successful lawyers. We see the outcome of Ivy League level schools letting in those with traditional beauty and hyperfemininity. The outcome of that is being Elle Woods saving a woman who is wrongfully convicted and becoming a successful Juris Doctor. Finally, our movie juxtaposes incongruities. However true the given title Dumb Blondes might be, we see those who would be considered traditionally stupid women, or non-politically aligned women, juxtaposed with Ivy League level classes, research, and learning. We also see hyperfemininity juxtaposed with traditionally masculine-dominated environments, like an Ivy League level school. To conclude, Legally Blonde is a feminist artifact that utilizes filmmaking stereotypes of traditionally beautiful, blonde, rich women being vicious villains to create a new type of feminist protagonist and bring a new perspective towards embracing hyperfemininity within feminism.